Number 85, Annie Crawford by Jodie, Portugal. With Annie Crawford, from the moment you saw her, you knew she was a nurse. It was inevitable, really. Giving her all for others, struggling on the breadline, taking on the job that no one wanted. Her hands had aged 10 years older than the rest of her, which in turn ensured her face wore the years of her profession, like she was a tree in the forest. She was in the habit of tying her auburn hair back in a regulation bun, so tight her true hair length was considered a myth, as if she was truly a siren, failing in her attempt to capture sailors and retiring to live on the land. Annie lived her life with duality until that duality was lost, and so immersed was her identity, intertwined with her profession, she had forgotten who she used to be. Her entire life was barely controlled chaos, a sea of repetition, feigning enthusiasm amidst the constant applause at 8 in the evening on a Thursday night. Something Annie found patronising, but never admitted that in public. Being forced to fake emotion, acting gratified when she felt anything but. Not seeing the light in the darkness, but the reality of it all, seeing death daily and the day after, which she had never signed up for, but was expected to stand up and be counted. Instead of slinking in the shadows and behind closed doors to right the wrongs at a distance. No one knew who she was anymore. Being a symbol in a blue dress and a lanyard was better than being human, where the inevitable got closer by the day while surviving on a diet of caffeine, nicotine, and a fake smile. 86. Lionel Grosser by Gerald Vinestock. He is proud of himself, Lionel Grosser, TV personality. You want someone to open a charity event? Lionel Grosser will do it. Afterwards, no one will recall the name of the charity, but everyone will remember Lionel Grosser, modestly inconspicuous in emerald trousers, a purple shirt, and a scarlet tie. Who will forget Lionel Grosser's hilarious joke about charity beginning at Lionel Grosser's home? Newspapers will carry a photograph of Lionel Grosser with the mayor, whose face is almost obscured by Lionel Grosser's raised arm. No one, except Jane Murfitt, will recall that little Jane Murfitt's song was drowned by laughter prompted by Lionel Grosser, conducting an imaginary orchestra and then eating imaginary cherries as she sang Cherry Ripe. You want someone famous to present the prizes? Lionel Grosser will be there. Do not expect him to talk to the prize winners as he hands over their books. He reserves any chat until afterwards, when the press photographer is there to record his practiced smile as he beams, not at the timid girl clutching her book, but at the camera. You want a judge for the cake stall at a country show? If the show is important enough, Lionel Grosser is your man. He will regale the audience with tales of his own baking, how they will laugh at his disasters with flour and icing sugar. Local television that evening will carry the moment when Lionel Grosser pretended to drop the winning cake. And there are Lionel Grosser's teeth again, rather more conspicuous than the thin little smile on the face of the prize winner. So long as the press or better television cameras are there, then Lionel Grosser is just the celebrity you need to lend gloss to your event. Number 87, Tom by Ellie Welbourn. Bowed but unfazed, Tom sat in the bar on a battered red leather stool, nursing a pint in his gnarled left hand. The air was thick with smoke, full of market traders hankering for a much-needed pint. Any money from sales was somberly celebrated in a country crippled by a cruel war. Tom, now in his 70s, was not embittered despite life's unfair treatment. One of 7 children born into poverty on the banks of the breadline, at 12 he followed his father down the pit to work. A nasty accident had caused a break in Tom's leg, which left him with a permanent signature limp. Thus set the tone for Tom's future working life as an odd job man. Working on a local farm, he met his wife Ginny, falling in love with her auburn hair and sparkling emerald eyes. In her, he found the first real contentment in his life, and his cup was filled when she bore him 2 daughters. Tom idolized them all, carving dolls for the girls from old wood and singing famous Welsh ballads to them. Alas, when Ginny died at 42 with TB, Tom resolved never to love again, his broken heart mere fragments of the man of his youth. He eventually lived alone in a small cottage in the village, where he was well known for his banter and the daffodil that sat loyally in his lapel. "Give us a song, Tom," someone shouted, amidst the heavy air in the pub, the pianist nearby ready to accompany. Tom stood up, leaning to one side, his yellow daffodil nodding at his breast. His white beard bristled, and his faded blue eyes suddenly alight with passion. A proud Welshman, chest puffed out, he sung from the herd with voice strong and true, a sound cascading with emotions of his years and the heritage of his forefathers. Applause rang out, filling the musty place. Tom flushed with emotion and stood shaking slightly until his daughter took his arm, propelling him towards the door and home. Number 88. Arthur Winter by Luna Barnard. The CEO, Arthur Winter, twitched impatiently as the videographer anxiously struggled to set up his camera. He would have done it in no time if it weren't for Winter's intimidating stare, which filled the room with unbearable tension. Although only average height, he had such a presence when entering a room that he could be mistaken for a giant by the way his employees cowered around him. Years of stress had made the skin around his eyes sag like old leather, and his hair had thinned into a few fragile strands, but he never lost his powerful, piercing gaze, which made even the most arrogant businessman crumble before him. Winter truly believed he was invincible and had the divine right to treat others as though they were beneath him. Arthur Winter did not have to say very much in order to convey his thoughts. The stern expression on his face was revealing enough. He had initially refused to film this video, but the PR team had warned him that he needed to be seen as taking his duty of care to his employees seriously in this COVID-19 pandemic, or it would reflect badly on both him and his company in the press. This is what made him change his mind, as the only thing that mattered to him more than the fortune he had built since starting his company was how the world perceived him. The safety and well-being of his employees was a concern that never even entered his mind. He needed to look as though he was in control of the situation. The videographer made his final adjustments to the camera lens, and it was time for Arthur Winter to address his workforce. Turning to face the camera, he began his futile attempt of sounding sincere. Number 89. Trevor by Ciaran O'Brien. Trevor was a pitiful man in both status and stature. Standing straight, he'd have been maybe 5.5 feet tall, but his tendency to slump made him shorter still. Years of rough living, alcohol abuse, and victimhood had given him the unfortunate appearance of a diseased sewer rat. As he scuttled around the streets of Newcastle, checking phone books for change and collecting cigarette ends from the floor, pedestrians would cross the street in order to avoid him. His dirty skin, which hung loose over his skeletal frame, was as tanned and tough as old boot leather. His head, atop of which sat thin and decaying hair, didn't appear to contain any meat, just skull and a pair of glazed eyes which rested loosely in the sockets. His mouth looked like a toxic place and reeked of whiskey and tobacco. The few teeth which remained were rotting like standing dead wood at the mouth of a damp cave, and his jaw hung eerily to the left, suggesting it had been previously broken. I had pitied him when I first laid eyes on him. Talking to him provided a great relief, however. He was a man of simple pleasures and quite happy with his lot in life. Number 90. Frederick Arthur Fleetfoot by Barbara Parsons. Frederick Arthur Fleetfoot, Freddy to his many friends, whistled his way along his walk, swift as a silvery stream, short blonde hair protruding in all directions like the petals of a demented sunflower, his twinkly, crinkly blue eyes full of fun, his smooth and ruddy complexion belying his more mature years. In and out of gates and drives he weaved, his slender, wiry frame surprising in its strength, for on his narrow shoulders he carried a hefty sack. Well-worn and comfortable trainers were appended to sturdy walker's legs, covered in stylish navy blue shorts, and topped by a scarlet shirt sporting its yellow gold logo, a shirt as distinctive as a robin's breast, spotted easily by homeowners eager to offer a forbidden cuppa. "Hello, darling," he cried. "How are we today?" before bursting into song in his fine tenor voice, a voice which had many times graced the stage of the local amateur theatre. Small of stature, larger than life, joker, flirt, Jack the Lad, terrible and tactless tease, dispenser of pocket money to stranded children, rescuer of cats stuck in trees, little old ladies, and damsels in distress. In short, Royal Mail's finest. Number 91. Bojo by Jack Lamb. It is the best of times in terms of national solidarity, and the worst of times because we're afraid of catching or passing on the COVID-19 virus. For Bojo, our Prime Minister, who self-identifies as the 21st century Winston Churchill, it is his time, and we should be grateful that cometh the hour, cometh the man. Sowing boyish enthusiasm like fairy dust across the nation, he wants us to know we are safe in his and his government's hands. The big challenge we face is being met by our super confident, ultra optimistic, COVID-19 conquering PM. He does not walk towards the microphones and cameras, but rather bounds like an eager lurcher to assure the Queen's subject that everything is under control. We look at his baggy suit, his spacious shirt, his storm-tossed hair and smile, knowing that even he realizes there are exceptions to his rules. Under 6 feet in height and over 17 stone in weight, he relies upon his ability to speak with boundless confidence about matters of state he has not fully understood. This snowman in a dark suit holds his listeners enthralled as, puffing and blowing like a steam engine, he stresses the least important part of a sentence as words waterfall from his mouth. And then when he is finished and steps back to preen himself, we are left wondering, while Bojo is clearly certain we are safe on his watch, in the tsunami of words which engulfed us as he spoke, did he actually say anything? Journalists bowl their questions, and our W.G. Grace of number 10 bats them away with skill and power, often appearing to answer questions he has not been asked, while, like an Etonian schoolmaster, assuring the newspaper hacks that their questions are very good. And then it's about turn, and our esteemed leader retreats to the former home of his hero, Winston Churchill, to sit down and watch himself on a big screen and wonder if he truly fills that great man's shoes as he leads his country in the greatest war it has ever faced, not least because, this time, the enemy is invisible. Number 92. Peter Gill by Caroline Crompton. A middle-aged man in a buttoned-up coat, he has a pleasant, everyday face, but his laughing eyes, crinkling at the corners, maybe tell a different story. This is Peter Gill, musician, actor, producer, director, writer, and teacher, a multifaceted man. Is he Tommy Atkins, the disillusioned soldier whose life he portrays from the World War I trenches to the inner war period and beyond? Possibly he is more the satirical and cynical Tom Lehrer in his evening suit and iconic spectacles, poisoning pigeons in the park. Or is he the suave and witty Noel Coward, always elegant, with cigarette holder to hand? Perhaps the real Peter Gill is as seen by Jerry Lee Lewis in leopard print shirt, enthralling audiences with his rocking piano. But there again, is he more at ease as a good time Charlie, jamming with his bandmates and cajoling the audience to sing along? We must not, however, overlook his roles as teacher and writer, the man who inspires others, or possibly he is most fulfilled as a producer and director of popular shows. It is likely that we glimpse the authentic Peter Gill on VE Day, however, dressed in wartime khaki, seated at a piano keyboard in a garden draped with patriotic bunting, happily playing and singing music of the era to lift the spirit of his neighbours in these lockdown times. We should never dismiss a seemingly unassuming man, such as Peter, under a buttoned-up coat. There may lurk a chameleon, a man of many parts. Number 93. Mrs. Digby by Helen Reid. Mrs. Digby sat at her ancient sewing machine. She was making scrubs and laundry bags for the beleaguered NHS and cloth masks for her community. Her sausage fingers, misshapen by arthritis, rings embedded in the puffy flesh, carefully manoeuvred a swathe of brightly coloured cloth. A large pile of donated materials sat by the side of her on the floor against boxes of her finished work. Isolated at 80 in the face of a pandemic, she now had a purpose. A kindly lady used to responsibility, her heavy features ended in 3 generous chins that wobbled with every vibration from the machine. Crow's feet spread like vintage fans across her pudding cheeks. The skin had a texture of dusty parchment due to face powder lightly settled in the crumpled tissue lines, while a dash of petal pink bled into the vertical lip lines. Grey, wiry eyebrows topped the faded blue eyes, concentrating behind her gold-rimmed spectacles. Once cornflower, they now had the look of blue material that had seen far too many hot washes. A cloud of silver grey surrounded her head, while loose hairs drifted about of their own accord like weeds under water. Small gold hoops hung from stretched and thinning earlobes, the pierced hole now a slit. Buttons on the floral blouse fought to contain the ample chest that strained out over a bulging elasticated skirt. Missing the definition of ankles, legs like sides of ham, with a roadmap of blue veins melted into puffy feet, firmly wedged into moccasin slippers that had long ago given up the battle and now were spread like shapeless pancakes on the carpet, the right one oozing over the electric foot pedal. Number 94. Kylie by Helen Steventon. 15-year-old Kylie didn't mind the lockdown. Gave her a chance to catch up with her friends and followers on Facebook, FaceTime and Twitter. Only so many hours in a day though, and she had to look good for the screen. A bit of glam for folk in these gloomy isolation days. Opening her computer, she put it on Screen Mirror, the one with the film star light bulb surround. Nearly ready for her adoring fans now, running her fingers through her violet hair and then using elastic bands, she twiddled it into devil's bunches. The colour went so well with her new off-the-shoulder burnt sienna blouse with its Peter Pan collar and puff sleeves. The necklace peeping from the front, spelling her name in 9-carat gold, finished the outfit off nicely. It didn't matter about below screen, still in her pink PJ bottoms and fluffy slippers. She had great expectations in reaching 2,000 hits today, so had to look her best. Full makeup, panstick style, no zits allowed. Arching her tattooed eyebrows, she fluttered her fake eyelashes. Needed some more fibre clumps on the bottom lashes. Made her come to bed azure eyes really stand out. Perhaps a touch more rouge too, on her to die for cheekbones. Not too much though, she didn't want to look common. Maybe a dab more scarlet woman lippy on the pumped up lips. Yes, post-box red smackers. Who could resist? She leant closer into the mirror, frowning. Must serum that line away tonight, while she was online shopping, spending her furloughed wages. Opening her luscious lips, she checked for lipstick marks on her dazzling white teeth. All okay. Time for her first post of the day. Smiling, she went viral, mwahing kisses to her followers as the hits zoomed to 2020. Totally blew her great expectations for the day. Number 95, Auntie Betty by Ellen Clavier. Auntie Betty is 95 years old. She is not famous. Her life is neither illustrious nor controversial, yet she is more important to us than words could say. The matriarch of our family, she has been cooped up in a nursing home for only a few months, convalescing amazingly well after life-saving neurosurgery. Waddling about in her tiny room, her mind is sharp. Her small bones and downy white hair belie her inner strength. Up until her surgery, she had lived alone, being wildly independent. She deeply resented her aging body and groused continually to everyone about her many pains. She was opinionated and often abrasive, chiding us when we didn't call, ever reminding us of her love. For all her squawking and flapping, we loved her most dearly. Auntie Betty came from a poor immigrant family. A streetcar accident had crippled her mother, and Betty had left school to help feather the nest. In her early 20s, she married a handsome soldier, but was forced to fly home after being widowed with 2 young daughters. She had pecked and scraped her way through life, fiercely determined to succeed. She immersed herself in literature and music, but always resented being deprived of an education, a husband, and financial security. A kind and generous soul, she was devoted to her large extended family. She just couldn't shake off her bitterness, having felt caged in all her life. Now confined to her room by masked strangers, she has reinvented herself. Rising from the ashes, she has become pleasant, non-complaining, and very grateful. Acutely aware of all the nursing home deaths, she sits perched in her roost, twittering away on the phone, urging her desperately worried loved ones to keep safe. She waits to soar above the isolation, ventilator shortages, gammon and spinach. Number 96, Billy Revel by Carol Fletcher. Behind the photograph albums and old cards, his heart thumping from exertion and giddiness, in the top cupboard of his wardrobe, he came across his ukulele. He sat down on the edge of the bed with it clasped in his worn hands. A long-retired mechanic, he could not rid his hands of years spent under bonnets, and his olive green Morris Minor standing in the driveway still required his expertise. He blew at it and dust flew back into his eye. He had lost much of the use of his right eye in an accident at work, and his eyelids slightly drooped. He blinked and focused. Memories of happiness this ukulele had brought came to him. Much time had passed since he last played, but he knew his hands could work their magic. With his ukulele he could bring much needed joy. Where he lived, he was known as Billy Revel, the repairer, always in his overalls and flat cap, never without his tie, always with a screwdriver, spanner and torch, ready to come to anyone's rescue. Anything broken, Billy could rescue and restore. He had a model railway and used his artist's hands creating a village where anything was possible. Standing in his clean overalls and Union Jack cap and tie, he knew this was the day. All around him, spirits needed lifting. On the front lawn was his chair with a Union Jack cushion. He sat down and started to play his ukulele. His wife proudly watched as people began to hear and realize what was happening. They joined in, clapping and singing and smiling. From then on, when spirits got low, people would call out, "Billy Revel, repair our spirits." And with ukulele in hand, smiles would appear all around, and nothing was beyond rescue.